Perfect. All right. I'm going to do a little pause. That way I can edit it from the beginning. So just give me a little second and then I'll start, okay? Hey everyone, it's Crystal from Sober Onions podcast. I'm really excited to be here today. As most of you know, I took a little hiatus from the podcast to work on myself, lose some weight, work on my career, which thank you for everyone for all your support during this time. I am excited to announce for season 3, there will be no commercials. We are completely funded by anonymous donors. So if you want to donate, you can do it via Zelle or Venmo, and that information is in the podcast links on Spotify and Apple. So I'm really excited. I'm here with Yvonne, Celeste Yvonne today, and I wanted to start up my podcast again. I felt like God was kind of nudging me a little bit to get back in it and get out there and start telling people my story again. And so much has happened, but I want to say hi to Celeste. So everyone say hello. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Crystal. Happy to be here.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk about her journey, about her book, and her Instagram page that I absolutely love. I want to give everyone just a little update about me. So just so you know too, Celeste, so the last year has been a very exciting year for me. I was 2 years sober living in California. And if you listen to the podcast, you know that I started this podcast at day 100. So I just celebrated my 3-year birthday for sobriety, which is huge because I can tell you that I could not fathom 14 days. I can remember sitting in my recovery house and thinking 14 days or a 30-day chip, like it just did not, like I didn't think I could do it. And it was like a personal battle, it was a personal notation in my mind. And now here I am at 3 years. At 2 years, I moved from California to Florida, which was a big move. And that was something I was a little concerned. Like everyone says, oh, well, you're going to move. Are you going to stay sober? How are you going to do sobriety through your move? Because it's a week of driving in all these different towns. And I heard it all, yada, yada, yada. And my oldest daughter, who is now talking to me. So again, if you're following the podcast, we have, reunited, which is really great. Rebuilding our relationship. She's 24 and she's in Orlando here. So I am in Orlando. I also worked really hard and got a job with Marriott International. So I am now a sales executive for Marriott International. And I will tell you, as most of you know, I own my own dance studio. I have lots of seasons with my ex-husbands and ex-partners and all the things and living in shadows. But I actually have done this career all by myself. So this is very exciting. And I can tell you, I lost everything. I was a business owner of a dance studio. I had money in the bank. I did fine. And my alcoholism just took me straight down to the ground. So when I got sober, it was COVID. And so I started doing Instacart. I was literally doing Instacart. And then I went to a luxury hotel and I became a coordinator. And I had to swallow some humble pie because I'm 44 now. I'll be 45 in August. And let me tell you, I do not like people telling me what to do. Like I am in my ways. And I have this, this pride that I always struggle with of like, I'm better than that. And I'm just not. And I remember feeling that way in recovery, thinking, what am I doing here with these people? Like, I am not that bad. I've never gotten a DUI. But the reality is that I was exactly like everyone else. And those people were the ones who I actually call my true friends now. And so I have been doing that. So that's kind of like where I've been. I've been working on my weight and working on my personal career. And I'm very excited to tell you that we are going strong. So, but I want to talk about you, Celeste. I'm really excited that you're here. You are incredible. You have over 127K followers on your Instagram. You're the author of It's Not About the Wine. You have the Sober Mom Squad app. You have done over 2,000 posts that I absolutely love. You have over 5,000 subscribers. You're someone who truly gives back to the sobriety and recovery community. And so I want you to know how much we appreciate you. You probably don't feel that sometimes because sometimes you're just throwing it out in the universe and you're just not sure who's grabbing it. But the reality is you're doing a fantastic job, and we're very grateful for that. So I'm going to turn it over to you. So tell me a little bit about you.
Well, thank you, Crystal. And First of all, I'm super proud of you. That is incredible. Talk about a life transformation that you are sharing with us. And I love just hearing how you literally are starting from the ground up and going big places. That's super amazing and incredible. And we're lucky that you are willing to share your story with us.
Thank you. It's a wild one.
It's wild. It's
It's a
wild what can
wild.
happen.
There's a lot of good podcasts in season 1 and season 2 that I can attest. I got a few calls from my mother. So
Yeah, they're always listening. They're always worried, aren't they?
yes, yes. So tell me about where you come from, like where I know a little bit about you because I've listened to a couple of your podcasts that you were on. You were on the Sober Mom Life. You also were on the Sober Girls Guide podcast. I enjoyed your the discussions that you guys have. They were really solid. But tell me what's going on in your life right now.
Yeah, so right now, I'm 6.5 years sober. Like if you want my life in real time, we
Absolutely.
just 2 days ago was the 5th anniversary of my father's passing.
Okay.
So that was really heavy, but really interesting too. You know, when my dad died, I was a little over 1 year sober. And I was it was a hard place to be in for grief. You know, all places are hard to be in for grief. But I think a lot of the tug for me to keep going was my father's addiction story and knowing that this is bigger than just me.
Absolutely.
This is more, this has had a hold over generations of our family, and that I can be the one to break the cycle, and that my dad saw me start to break the cycle. And I want to keep going for him and through him and with him. And it's very humbling, but I'm so grateful to say that, yeah, even 5 years later, when I felt so helpless and heartbroken, and it felt like my life would be forever changed as I knew it, that I'm still sober, that I'm still going strong in my recovery. And I like to think he's watching.
Absolutely. I know he is. I just lost my grandfather as well, and he was 27 years sober when he passed. I come from an entire line of alcoholics. All of my grandparents have passed from alcoholism or, something that caused from that. And my grandparents were very, very important to me. They were very much in my life, but they also passed away sober. Which to me was like almost losing that connection of having somebody in the family that understands, because my parents don't drink. They had the alcoholic parents and they wanted to skip the generation, thinking if they did, their kids wouldn't. And of course I am, and I don't think anybody realized how serious it was until I did get to the end, and then it was very shocking. But I just lost my grandfather. I drove up to the Panhandle in Jacksonville. He lives up there, and I got to spend some time with him. And it was just, him saying that he's so proud of me. And, it hit me so hard because he knows what I'm doing. Like anybody who has struggled with alcoholism knows the struggle is so personal. And when I heard on the podcast that you had lost your father, but that he was an alcoholic and you grew up, and that you really thought that you were going to break the cycle, and like we were talking about how you think that you're above the issue, and then you realize you're not. You have this commonality with your father that that he understands that you didn't get there the way he did, but you're still there. So when he passed, what were some things that you did to deal with it?
Yeah, I think grieving sober is really hard, but so important. And we live in a society that encourages numbing out in general, but when you add grieving to the mix, it's next level. I mean, I had a friend who's like, I looked everywhere to find a gift basket to give you, that didn't include a bottle of wine. I'm like, that is so symbolic of just where
Yes.
we are. Everyone drinking at the funeral. It's the funeral of a man who struggled with addiction his entire life. I mean, it's kind of strange. I mean, it's a weird world we live in.
Mhm.
And uh, so in a lot of ways, it was hard. My first instinct was to numb out, to want to numb out. But what really pulled me to keep going was his legacy, how I can honor him, uh, the idea that he's watching, and not like in a creepy way, but in a like, I'm
Loving,
so
yeah,
proud of you.
absolutely.
You're doing amazing things kind of way. And that he did get to see me uh, in my early recovery before he passed was really important to me too. Um, Losing him, being at his deathbed and holding his hand
Hmm.
and watching his last breath was one of the most powerful moments of my life. I would put it right there with childbirth.
Hmm.
Um, and it reminds you of the futility of life, and how precious each moment is, each breath is, and how special our people are. And this is all just really important things to be sober for. These
Absolutely.
are the most important things to be sober for. And I'm grateful I did the grieving process sober, because I think it helped me get to a stronger place sooner than I would have otherwise.
Absolutely. And dealing with grief is, it's as a mother, right? You're being watched by the kids on how you handle it because that's how they'll handle it. And so it's not just the responsibility of your own. You have your kids to, comfort and help and, maintain your sobriety so that they have some consistency. So and I know a lot of people I've talked to that said, oh, well, I'm just going to be sober, but if I lost my kids, I don't know,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've even said that if I lost my daughters, I don't know if I'd stay sober. But the reality is I would, because that's what the only thing they want from me. And I would be completely not honoring my daughter's wishes, and which is to be healthy and to not be drinking. I know with my oldest daughter, now that I've been 3 years sober, it's still different. She's seen me quit. She's seen me quit for a cruise or for I want to lose weight or whatever it was for that week or whatever, but she's never seen me live clean and sober. Like
Mm.
just, I don't have any interest in partying. I don't have any interest in drinking. And I did ask God to remove that obsession from me. And thank God he did. What I do, I'm around alcohol all the time. And it blows my mind because I literally look at people and go, oh my gosh, how do they just have one? And like go to bed, because I go to all these conferences and we're there, and afterwards it's like happy hour. This is happy hour everywhere, right? As soon as 5 o'clock hits, it's happy hour. They host all these or all these private parties that you get invited to, and everybody has like 1, 2 drinks and they leave, and I'm just like, wow, that's impressive. Because I can't do that. And I don't have the desire to anymore. I have a drive to, I have goals and dreams and something, I started vision boards. That's not even my personality, but I started doing things so that I could see them.
Yeah.
I am a book reader. Sometimes I forget that, that I need to stop and read something, to change the cycle of the internet per se.
Yeah.
We're literally stuck to our phones and to our computers and everything all day, which it's a love-hate relationship. But sometimes I need to just stop and read a book. I do 2 things that stop me: read a book or go to the movies. Those are the only 2 things where I'll shut down. And so I know that you wrote a book, and I know that you're a writer. That's what you do now. And what are you working on right now? And how do you feel like your book is being implemented into the recovery scene? Do you feel like it's there, or do you feel like it could be more of? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's been such a love-hate thing. And so many people warn me, like, just don't get into the details. Just, once the book is out there, it's out there, and just focus on what's next. Um, it's a little weird going from something that I've been working on for so long, several years, to kind of feeling like I'm just kind of floating through time, not really with a tangible deadline or goal to work towards, like I was with the book. So I've been writing on my Substack on recovery, and keeping that consistent. But my thought now is maybe looking at trying a different type of writing, looking at fiction maybe, and just kind of stretching my creativity muscles, and to just see what I enjoy doing. I'm in my midlife, I'm 45 years old. I'm a stay-at-home mom in a lot of ways, because I'm at home and I'm the default parent, and my husband works full time, but I have flexibility to also pursue things that I'm passionate about. And writing is something that I didn't give myself permission to be passionate about until just a few years ago. I was a corporate America working woman for 20 years, doing marketing, and just, I was on the hamster wheel. And I think my drinking allowed me to stay on that hamster wheel for a lot longer than I would have otherwise, because I was too numbed out to see how miserable I was.
Yeah.
And to not seek out a better way.
Yeah.
A better approach. I feel like I had just kind of brainwashed myself into thinking that this is just what we do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a working woman, and I'm breaking cycles, and I'm,
consistent, dependable.
Yeah. And I'm a super woman, like I thought that was the goal. And when I quit drinking, I kind of looked around and I was like, I don't even like what I'm doing. Like this, like, there's no passion here.
Totally.
It's, what do they call it? Quiet quitting. Like, I feel like I quiet quit from my role in marketing years ago, before I even knew that was a thing. I was just going through the motions, and kind of feeling listless in just about everything. And sobriety really forced me to have that reckoning in a way that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And so when they say, our sobriety is transformational, it is so much bigger than just quitting alcohol, because you reevaluate everything in the best way. We talk a lot in recovery meetings about, doing the short-term work versus the long-term work, short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. And sobriety forces you to go into long-term thinking, whereas addiction and addictive behavior is all about short-term benefits. And I have found new purpose and new roads on my journey, because I have transitioned to more long-term thinking.
That's great. That's really good for new sobriety, because I find that most of the time your podcast or your recovery is going to be for someone in their first 5 years. Most of the time, anybody 5 and above is either, doing the recovery, they're solid, they're going to their own meetings, they have their own lifestyle. But in the beginning, we are reaching out for that solidarity and validation, and we're not really sure how to think long term. It's like, if you go immediately from short term and drinking every day, because I can tell you, all I thought about was my next drink. It was waking up, taking a drink, figuring out when I was going to nap, Then once I napped, I was going to take, do the wine and the beer first before I did the hard. I'll do the hard late. Like that was my life. Like it didn't matter what happened that day. It was a schedule of drinking in my head from 9 to 10 p.m. at night. And that is short term. And then you get sober and you're like, okay, not what do I do with myself, but what do you do with all the mess in your head? A lot of people, how are you able to be around drink all the time? Because it's not about the drink for me. It was a lot of trauma. It was a lot of things that I numbed out, like you said. And that's why I love all these resources, like your Sober Mom Squad, your Ultimate Mom Challenge. Those are all great things for new people in sobriety and people that are just needing to, pivot. I know for me in my recovery, I feel like every 6 months I'm pivoting. What worked for me for that 6 months, I have to try something else or get out of my head because I confuse serenity, with boredom, and calmness, like to me, serenity is like, I don't know, being in the Maldives and like, scuba diving, but really it's just my daily, peace. And for me, having such a chaotic and hectic life, trying to make it every 24 hours instead of trying to make it every 20 hours, I'm trying to make 24 hours mean something. And that's a totally different way to live. But for someone new, if they were able to grasp that this is the long run, you're going to be okay. You're new to sobriety or you're pivoting in your recovery. This is long-term thinking, not short-term. I love that. That's amazing that you brought that up. So you talk about in some of your podcasts about just how you didn't tell anyone for a year. I was really enamored that you did it all on your own. So I was the opposite. I went through rehab, T-Tox, Vivitrol, naltrexone, not knowing anything. I live AA every single day. That's my journey. It's not for everyone. I do Celebrate Recovery. That's a Christian program. That's a step program. Like everybody does it their own way. But it's such a personal journey. And you mentioned in your podcast how you didn't tell anyone for a year. Then you sort of announced it. And then you were joining kind of groups where people were celebrating their milestones. And you all of a sudden, your mind just went, wait a minute, I can be happy and proud of this milestone that I am hiding almost like a secret. Like, hey, guess what? I'm sober. It was more like, you are awesome. You are sober. This is incredible. Tell me a little bit about that and where you were mentally when you were not telling people versus telling people.
Yeah. I grew up in a home of addiction, and secrets were our superpower. I mean, in a family of addiction, the superpower is secrets. And so when I realized I had to quit drinking, it felt like a secret to bear, a burden to carry. This was now my secret to bear, just like my father's addiction was his secret to carry. And so that's how I went into it. I went into it holding it very tightly to my chest, not wanting anyone to know what was going on inside of me, and fear that if people did realize what I was doing, they would understand why I was doing it, which is because I had a drinking problem.
Right.
And that to me felt like the ultimate failure, because I saw what happened with my father's drinking problem. He had a stroke at 51 years old. He lost almost everything. And including, I mean, people's respect. I saw that. I was 15 years old when he had that stroke, and I saw firsthand just his life just be ripped from him in every sense, and him continue to drink through that. And so when I went into my recovery journey, I was like, first of all, I'm going to do it different, because what he was doing didn't work for him. But second, I am not my father. There's a bit of that stubbornness that goes on. I am not my father's child. I am not drinking out of brown bags. I'm not hiding liquor in my underwear drawer. So I will not go to recovery meetings because I do not qualify as
Mhm.
that level. You know, so there was a lot of this misunderstanding about what addiction is, about what recovery is and who it's for.
Mhm.
So I quit cold turkey. I didn't tell anybody. I just told my mom and my husband that I was quitting, but I did not go into the details about how bad it was getting.
Mm.
And I thought like this, I was just doomed to this life of deprivation. From here on
Feels that
out,
way. It feels that
yeah,
way.
that I am stuck at the kids' table for the rest of my life, drinking Capri Suns out of the kids' ice chests. Like this is just my burden to now carry. And it wasn't until I think I was 11 months sober when we had this group thread going on with some girlfriends of mine about something we're really proud of. And a friend of mine posted she was 6 weeks sober. And I remember being like, wait a minute, that's something we're allowed to be proud of.
Yeah.
Like it just never occurred to me that this is something we could celebrate,
Hmm.
that this didn't have to be a secret. And 1 month later, when I hit 1 year, I posted about it, that I'm like, look, I'm 1 year sober. First of all, none of you guys knew I was even doing this.
I know, that's crazy.
And secondly, like, yes, I had a drinking problem and I fooled you all. Um, and I thought this is something I was to be embarrassed of or to hide, but
Hmm.
I am finding myself again in this recovery. And I never want to go back. I never want to go back to that day one, which felt like the loneliest, scariest day of my life. I never want to go back to that place where I couldn't remember what happened the night before. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to live that way anymore. And I just did 365 days of this, and I'm never looking back. Like
Yeah.
I'm going forward full force. And this is actually something that I'm really excited about, and I want you to know about it too.
I love that. A lot of people that don't understand recovery or addiction, because a lot of people don't, unless you're in it, it's very hard to understand because they don't think about alcohol. They don't think about, choosing that over something else. And my sister brought something up the other day and she said, she was kind of like treading a little bit because, they're very sensitive to me. They're supportive, but also they don't want to ask me questions that like, might embarrass me, like you said, is there something I'm proud of or is it something I'm embarrassed of? Because I know like I had to make major amends to my sister because I was drunk and almost dropped her baby. Like
Mm.
literally it was not good and I didn't even know it. I had to be told about it. So and it was funny because she was actually my biggest supporter in the beginning because, she knew she was 17 years younger than me and she's absolutely beautiful family. And I love her to death. But she said, I don't know how to say this, but like, how do you do what you do right now? Like, I have to ask, like, you did it fast. You went from drunk, sober to this. Now you're a sales executive at Marriott. Like, how do you manage that? She's like, I don't know if I'm going to offend you by saying that. And I said, you know
Yeah.
what? I said, have you ever moved a zip code? Like, have you moved? Have you moved your entire house with a U-Haul? You change your driver's license address. You have to go to the post office and make sure everything goes, you forward all your new mail and you pay that $1, every time you move. My recovery is exactly that. All I did was change zip codes. I still lived in that zip code. That zip code is still a part of my past. That house that I used to live in, which was addiction, it was alcoholism, it's still there. I could go back and visit if I want to. I choose not to. There's nothing there. It's just like moving. Would you move back into your old house? So you left your house because you had either a better house or it's too high pay of rent, like whatever the pros and cons were. The pros of moving were more than staying in that house. And there's a process that everybody is familiar with. If you're buying or renting, it's the same thing. You're signing contracts and you're moving, it's all official. And with recovery, it's a lot like that because you have to almost move your zip codes and change to move forward in your life. Like for me, some people can live right where they're at and they sober. I feel like where my addiction was the highest, I don't really want to go back there. I really don't want to
Mhm.
see people and look at a street corner or a sidewalk or a house that I know I partied in or I did this in, or maybe I fell asleep after that event and I slept in my car in that parking lot because I'm not going to get a DUI. Like I chose to go where I went, that was my choice. And but I think people can relate to changing a zip code because
Mhm.
we have to, in recovery, we have to look at the pros and cons and where we're at. And for you, I think that you not only have done that, and you're maintaining it, you're also, you're reaching out and you're helping people in other places. And that's what this is all about. And that's what your book's about and your writing. And I think that, like I told you before, I think sometimes when you're throwing things out, you don't realize how much you're impacting someone. And you were somebody that I have been listening to and I've been watching, and you've done it completely different than me. And I'm enamored by it because sometimes I don't even know how I'm doing it. And I think maybe I need to pivot and do something else. And guess what? We can. We're in control of our sobriety. That's the only thing that we can control. We can't in control how much a banana is going to cost tomorrow because it's outrageous. Like groceries are outrageous, inflation's outrageous. Like my internet went up and I called them and I'm like, why did my internet go up? They're like, oh, inflation. And I'm like, my paycheck didn't inflate. Like what is happening, And I think about all the money that I spent on alcohol and it
Mm.
just blows my mind. But really, it just comes down to connecting with people and respecting all the different types of recovery. And if you're listening to this, obviously you have two examples of people that are living a recovery life and they're completely different. That's okay. You choose you, right? You choose how you're going to do this recovery and know that you're not alone because there's so many of us out there that are moms. And, I always hashtag on everything, hashtag sober mom. Like hashtags are really important when you first get sober. You get rid of everything in your Instagram and just start doing hashtags of recovery, sobriety, sober mom, hashtag recovery. That's how you're going to change what you see in your life. And then you'll see life in a different lens. And I love what you're doing. And I gotta ask, are you gonna write another book?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do. But I host 2 meetings a week for Sober Mom Squad.
Okay.
Uh, and I write on Substack, and yeah, I don't know what's next for me.
Okay.
Right now, my kids they take up a lot of time and a lot of
Absolutely.
energy. And I'm in a place where I can actually do that with them. And it doesn't
Right.
feel like a burden the way it did when I was drinking.
Absolutely. And my best friends have young kids, and I always tell them, like, you're so lucky you got sober when they're young because mine are adults. And I ruined a lot. I have to own that and I have to realize, but I do hold on to those moments when I wasn't drinking and when I did raise them, and that doesn't cancel it out, even though sometimes I feel like it does. I feel like everything I've done in the last year doesn't count. Just my alcoholism completely cancels it out. And that's tough, and when I get in those moments where I know that I am like kind of in a funk. I don't know if you want to call it a funk or what you said, like a something like you're floating, sober
Yeah.
floating. I love that. I love that hashtag sober floating. Like,
Sober floating.
yeah, like I feel that's like kind of where we all get. And it's like at that point you have to pivot. And for me, I have to get out of my head and have to try and help someone else. It's the only
Mm.
time I feel like I'm not focusing on poor old Crystal, right? Like, I could go into 1,000 negative things of why this and this isn't what I thought it was, and I should have done this, and I should have got sober earlier, and I should have da, 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 But the reality is I should be dead, I should not be here. And I know there's a lot of people that listen and and they are struggling and they don't know where to start, because I didn't know where to start. I Googled AA. That is how I started. Like, I had
Yeah.
no idea what to do. And that's why we're here. We're here to show people to lay that pavement so they can drive their car to the next zip code. Because it's a hard journey, but there's lots of ways to do it, and it doesn't have to be one way. You can start something and not like it and do something else. There's no rule book in sobriety. We literally are all just, we're not winging it, but we are in some aspects. Like being a mom, there's no rule book. You do the best that you can based on what you know. I feel like recovery is the same way. When we throw in the towel with alcohol, our life changes and you feel like you're sober floating a little bit, like, just doing life. And that's why when we connect, we get that, like, I know I do. Like, I was excited to interview, I was excited to see you, somebody that it knows what I go through, someone who I respect, who, wrote a book, like all these things. Like, those are things that help me in my recovery, and whatever helps people in their recoveries, I think, is why we're here. So with that, what else, is there anything you would like to say to anyone on anything that's coming up with you, anything that you are working on right now that they can come and follow you, and then we'll close it out.
Yeah, so on my Substack, I write about things that are weighing on me or that I'm noticing in the sober space. And I guess the thing that I'm talking about lately is kind of this emergence of cannabis mom. We're moving from mommy wine culture to what it seems like cannabis mom culture. And how, like, I know where I live, pot became legal in 2017. And so there's distilleries on every corner practically.
Yeah, it's how California is.
Yeah. And it worries me for people in recovery, because it's so available and it's becoming as normalized as alcohol.
Yes. It's accepted.
And accepted. And while, I have nothing against pot in and of itself, I do worry for people like me who have addictive personalities and who see other people doing it and think, well, maybe this will be harmless for me.
Yeah.
And then this whole idea of cannabis mom culture, where so many people are trying to normalize parenting under the influence as a crutch, when what I believe with my whole heart, I wrote a whole book on it, that it's what parents genuinely need isn't wine and it's not drugs. It is better support. We need a more supportive, conducive community, system, legislation, and we need more equality on the home front when it comes to household and childcare labor.
Absolutely.
At home, when a mom is the default parent and maybe the primary homemaker, she can begin to feel like she needs a crutch because she needs the support from her spouse, if she's married, that she needs. And we need to break through some of these stereotypes and norms that we saw our parents doing, to have a more distributed home front where both the parents are engaging in the household labor, in the childcare. So we're not reliant or dependent on alcohol or drugs to get us through. That's my goal. It really isn't about the marijuana or the alcohol. I want mothers particularly to be in a place where we don't feel like the weight of the world is on our shoulders to carry, that we have support from people around us and we can genuinely feel like we're part of a team. I mean, I know that's why I turned to alcohol, was because I felt alone and carrying the weight of all these things to be this super mom. And I leaned on alcohol when what I really needed was a better support team in place.
I love that. And I think you're doing a great job. And I really appreciate you coming on today. And I had a blast. And if you want to follow Celeste, it's the Ultimate Mom Challenge on Instagram. You'll see all her reels that are great. You can relate to them and follow her and check out her book. It's Not About the Wine. And we'll see what her Substack is. And I love that you came on here. And I appreciate now that we know each other. I have a new friend in Nevada. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, so again, this is great. Thank you so much for coming on. I want to thank everybody. This is Crystal from Sober Onions Podcast. Remember, if I can do it, you can do it. I should.